welcome everyone to this webinar. And I think let's start so that we don't waste any more time and we can even have discussions about what people are currently going through and ideas that they are having specifically to their own research. And I'm excited about that because that's how I also learn from all of you and colleagues that are here in terms of how we are also dealing with issues related to your work. So let me then once again welcome everybody to the webinar. I have put in the chat box the link where you can download the presentation. So you'll be able to also follow through and have a platform where you can actually see what we are covering. Um, just hold on. Let's just do one little thing here. Swap. Great. So you should be able to see my screen with the presentation, and I've got in the other screen some information so that well ways I can just monitor what's happening. So let me take this opportunity to welcome you all. I'm excited. I've been doing these workshops for quite a bit of time. And every year when I say I'm going to do a free platform workshop like this one, I always am amazed by the different things I'm discovering, also by what others are doing. And I say so because there's also challenges that come with methodology. And then one of the greatest challenges that comes with methodology has to do with the challenge of tradition. And I reflect upon this a lot when I consider how I have come to understand different methods that we use and how sometimes tradition locks us. For me, tradition looks like this. In 2002, I enrolled for an undergraduate qualification in industrial psychology at the then University of Port Elizabeth. And one of the courses that we had to take, I think in the second year of that enrollment, was a course on psychological research methods. And as we were being taught, the institution was going through its own identity phase, and the institution had changed its name to now become the from University of Port Elizabeth to Nelson Mandela University. So all of those institutional changes that were happening were things that were very crucial at that particular time and were very influential in shaping some of the directions that we were taking. One of the most crucial things that was happening at that time was the necessity for disciplines such as industrial psychology to be more accommodating to uh, new things that were happening at that particular time. So one of the new enrollment things was that there was a surge in enrollments amongst African learners. So historically, industrial psychology enjoyed the privy of being a very white dominated type of discipline. So a lot of Black students were getting into industrial psychology. And there was nothing wrong with that. We appreciated that even more because we were part of the cohort that was trying to make a difference and a huge change to a discipline, which I reflect upon this in an article I wrote for the conversation on what we call weirdness, Western for the educated, rich industrialized nation focus, developed nation type of focus. And basically, it meant that for a Black IOP who was trying to come up, it was very difficult to find your space in a very dominated terrain, such as the one that I'm describing. So what happens next, which is quite fascinating, is that one of the professors who was tasked with the responsibility of teaching this module would then make a statement as they were teaching the module, and the statement went to the fact that because of its measures of monitoring reliability and validity, the quantitative research method is the best method you can use in conducting research because it is bias free. That's exactly what he said, because it was bias free. On the ground, when I started looking at even what was happening on the ground, which was quite interesting, on the ground, we had a little bit of a problem. The problem was that what you would call bias free, well, it was basically instruments and scales that were developed in Europe that were being used to measure African communities and what they are about. So I would sit in this class and I would be given a scale to measure job satisfaction. Okay. And then I would go with it to the corporate world and say, I'm measuring job satisfaction. And those measures of satisfaction were actually not measures specific to the African context, though they may have room and play to have reliability across different countries, but were they really relevant to the context that I was particularly talking to? And that's a issue that I've grappled with particularly with quantitative research. I sometimes see the emphasis being on proving what they would call the Cronbach alpha coefficient. So here we are, we've collected data in a particular community. You send the data to a statistician. The statistician then says, I want to talk to you about your data. Okay, what's the problem? Actually, this data is showing low ratings of reliability and validity. So it could be, and one statistician once said that about some data, says it could be that we're not going to be able to use this data. And then, so from a statistical point of view, because of the internal consistencies of the scale, it's difficult for me to measure certain phenomena because of what the computations are saying. But now think of it from a point of view of people who filled out that survey, the time that they gave to filling out that survey. So it really creates a lot of tension and a lot of thinking around what we ought to really be doing, particularly with the issues of the data that we've got. And I think this is something I'm excited about tonight because I reflect a lot on some of those experiences. So let's paint a picture. What is currently happening in the research landscape? I'll be specific to our context in South Africa, but equally it covers the general populace across the world. The first thing we're discovering is the necessity for research that tackles societal issues. Now, if you're on the line right now, you're a PhD candidate, you're a early career scholar, you're a mid-career seasoned scholar, whatever categorization that you identify yourself with, here is the concern I have. And it's a concern I have, particularly with all research. Tomorrow, we are sitting in one of my committees here at the university where our master's and PhD students will be presenting. Is the research that we are doing tackling societal issues and also stimulating social and economic expansion? Is it really doing that? Is it research that once it's been done and its implications are noted, it's research that people are saying we need to get this to policymakers as soon as possible? So ask yourself that question. And if you're a PhD candidate, that's an important question to ask because if you're going to meet me as an examiner, I am definitely going to ask that question in your feedback report to say what is the societal issue that this research is addressing and how is this research going to help us to solve that societal issue that you've identified. Our Minister of Science and Technology and Innovation, Minister Dr. Blaine Zimande, would also say um, we are also in need for research that results in technical advancements and innovation breakthroughs. Okay, so there's some research you come across where somebody says that my research is going to make a methodological contribution. Now, that's well and good. That's very interesting. But what is it that's going to come out of it? It might not be necessarily an innovation of some sort, but it could be a change in behavior that results in some form of difference in how people are thinking. Minister Mzimande also continues right at the bottom there. We are also need in researchers can apply for funding by submitting proposals that describes their projects, objectives, methods, projected income outcomes, and how the research fits into national priorities. So whatever country you're from, national priorities are crucial. what is this research trying to fit in? And this is what I'm currently doing for every research funding application we are applying for every student I'm supervising, to say, let's think about these questions that you see on the line. It's not always easy because people who are getting funded are those who are moving away from dependencies. And part of the dependencies are dependencies around tradition, thinking outside the box. I was reviewing a proposal in which there was talk of a study focused on gender. And I felt that that proposal missed the mark in terms of not addressing a topic related to a theory related to gender. So those are types of dependencies we're looking at in cross collaboration, working across the board in trying to understand phenomena. It's no longer one way of seeing things. It's about seeing things from multiple lenses and so forth. But however, research that often not does not get funded, according to this article here by Ntusi, Ntobeko Ntusi, is research that violates the 4 Rs. What are the 4 Rs? Relevance, responsiveness, responsibility, and the element of resilience, to show what is it that we are benefiting from this particular research. We can debate the one on resilience and even substitute it with research methods. The research methods need to also accompany the type of approach that you are following in terms of the research that you're doing. Sadly, in all of this, if you don't have a PhD and you're hoping to set yourself in a career in academia, it's somewhat a little bit tougher now than it was a couple of years ago. Number one, a lot of people are wanting to get PhDs. Number two, um, people are getting PhDs at a younger age. And number three, well, the pool of funding for those who are engaging in a PhD while at the same time maintaining a day job, while at the same time having household responsibilities to take care of, it's becoming somewhat a little bit difficult and a bit cumbersome to be able to understand what is it that we are ought to be doing. And this is not me being a prophet of doom, but this is me also trying to be very honest with you, colleagues, to say, this is the situation we are in. We need to reinvent ourselves, particularly for a career in academia, and having a wide repertoire of skills set to be able to solve the challenges that we have. I know this very well because I ask some uncomfortable questions. Someone comes and says they're going to do a survey. I don't have a problem with a survey. But if you're going to do a survey in a community where there are clear struggles around educational attainment, class struggles happening there, and your survey is trying to solve a particular problem or understand a particular phenomena, I think we need to be very circumspect in what this means in view of the challenges that we're already facing in the research landscape. Again, we can even talk about challenges that are happening inside the country, outside. For instance, the emergence of Donald Trump and also social science research has suffered equally, as well as our colleagues in the sciences also suffering. So we are in a very precarious situation where we must find ways, I believe, of reinventing ourselves, of managing our academic careers in a way that allows us to also get this existential type of being where we enjoy having and being part of a community of scholars that is alert to things that are happening. And this is where methodology becomes important. I'm not going to advocate people to change methodologies. If you're busy with a PhD and you have defended yourself for a particular method, maintain it, but just be aware of some of the issues that we're going to discuss tonight. We can also talk about trends that are shaping the academic career, publishing or perishing. You're expected right now, if you're an academic with or without a PhD, to be doing some form of publications or not. well, you're expected to be doing it, but if you're not, it becomes an issue. I'm busy currently today and the rest of the week looking at IPAs for some of our colleagues as the head of department, where we sit down and say, okay, we're doing the midterm review. How many have you published? What have you done? As a way of trying to also gauge how well people are working or how well they're not working, particularly in the game that we're in. The numbers game. I think methods can also help us. The idea that great researchers are the ones with so many publications is really a fallacy. I think there could be somebody with two, three papers, good quality papers, who is having more impact in their work than somebody who may have quite a stream of papers around their name. And we need to be very honest with ourselves in terms of what is it that we're trying to achieve. We can talk at length also about the challenge of the well-rounded academic. How does this person exist? This well-rounded academic, this person who is able to do so much to do all, be a jack of all trades, and that person probably does not exist. And what we're arguing for really is the necessity to be able to know what you can do to be able to achieve your objectives and what you can't do, but you can also leverage from others. And there's a lot we can say about this, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. So I want to leave with you 7 points that I think we should consider, particularly as people who are looking for data. I want to say to you the first of these points is something that I'm currently practicing, and I'm going to be trying out next year, and I'm going to practically show you where the effort on the ground is. But I want to say data is not gone, but data is actually all around us. What actually is gone is the inquisitiveness that comes with looking for data around us. I was listening to the radio this morning and I was hearing a discussion about what's happening with Toys R Us, how toys all of a sudden have become so expensive in the context that we're in. And callers started calling in and talking about how the challenge they're facing in terms of buying toys. And then I actually thought to myself that this is a nice way of actually collecting data in which business management students can actually work with those through cases and actually building some form of narrative around. So how do we encourage the emergence of Afrocentric toys that are also affordable while at the same time have entertainment value? And this is where us as researchers come in. So let me say it again. Data is not gone. Data is everywhere. But what sometimes stops us from seeing data is the glasses that we're wearing. And I say broaden your lens, wipe those glasses a little bit to be able to see where that data is. And I'm going to show you a little bit later on how I'm trying to shape this new narrative around data. If we want to change, shape knowledge production and dissemination, there are things that we must understand where data is. Data is found in the researched context, in the environments in which we are staying in, there is data. Data is found in the research context itself, the methods that we use. You could find data in trying to make a methodological argument to say, I want to show that data from the radio can be used as a way of soliciting responses to help people. I want to show that digital photo voice is a method we could also use. Data can be found in the researcher's context. You can actually analyze the findings of people who have used the scale, the entrepreneurial orientation scale in the last 10 years of research done in South Africa or Zimbabwe or wherever to try and see what is it that that data tells us about the context that we're in. Data is also found in the text of the research. Okay, this is where document analysis comes in. So where is the data? The data is found in the researched context. The data is found in the research context. The data is found in the researcher or the researcher's context, and the data is also found in the text around us and everywhere about us. A question to ask to those who work with a mixed method is found there. You can actually use this as a workshop tool that you could use. Um, I thank you for Prof. Matibe. I will elaborate on photo voice data. So what resources do I currently have? What assumptions am I willing to make? What am I willing to learn? What sources of data are there? And by filling that out, it actually gives you a map. It could also be a nice conversation starter with supervisors who are trying to actually ascertain whether a mixed method or a general method would do. I will explain on photo voice later on when I talk about the digital methods that are available. So methods and text and data is all around us. These are examples of what data exists around us. There is data in interaction, data which is participant generated, data in observation, data in documents, data in measuring experiences, data in measurement of strategies themselves related to specific tools that we are using. And this is the most popular one, particularly in my field where people use scales and so forth. All of this tells us and informs us where data is and how it's structured in the context that we're in. So I'm going to stop sharing. Well, first of all, let me tell you what this is about. This is a folder that I've created in my folder uh, on the computers. This is a folder I am developing. That's something I want to try out next year. And I want to be honest, I'm a bit nervous about this journey. And this, you're the first group I'm actually sharing this with. But from next year onwards, I want to stop collecting quantitative data. I want to either work with data that I already have, which is quantitative in nature. If it means that we remodel the data and also just adhere to whatever ethical guidelines that are there, it's perfectly fine. But I want to make an argument that data is everywhere. And so what I've been doing in the last couple of months, I've been creating a folder where I show the new forms of data, new projects I want to work on. And I want to share with you some of those projects so that you could have a look and have a feel of what I'm talking about. So the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to open those folders so that you'll be able to see. And then I'm going to share again so that you're also able to see. So the folder is called New Forms of Data. I'm going to put it on the screen so that you have a look at it. And there's new forms of data. There we go. Okay, so what are the new forms of data that I'm looking at? The first one is, let's start with entrepreneurship data that I'm collecting from newspapers. Okay, so every time I get the newspaper, and I think we have a big challenge nowadays, people don't buy or read newspapers. So it's also a little bit of a tricky situation, but it is what it is. Let's share. Okay, so you'll be able to see now. So every now and then, here's an example of newspaper cuttings that I see. Um, let's zoom it in and then we the stop share. Let's do this. So I'm going to share with you one of them. This is taken from mostly two sources of newspapers. The first one is called the Daily Dispatch, and the second one is called the Sunday Times, the Times newspaper, Sunday Times. So they always have a section and a segment which is focused on careers. So this is an example of some of the content they've got. This is a story about positivity, about a safety officer who's making a difference. This is a story about a farmer who's thriving in farming after failing their matric. This is also about farming as well. So what I do, I keep the screenshots, obviously, when I want to tell the story. But what I'm also keeping, and I'll show you now, is a record of all the cases. I've called them cases using qualitative language because that's exactly what they are anyway. They are cases. So I've created a case, and let's say, let's take you to case one. This is case one. Let's share the screen. This is case one, and this is taken from the Daily Dispatch, published on the 9th of June, 2025. That's the safety officer's case. So what we now have is somebody who's done an interview and written a newspaper story about this person, and they are using direct quotes from them. I've got all that information. With that information now, I am now able to then say, okay, what is it that I need to do with this information? One of the things I need to do is I need to set a research question. And my research question could be, um, what are the challenges that are faced by entrepreneurs in the startup phase of their businesses? And then I then analyze each and one of those cases that I've been collecting every week to answer that research question. In essence, I can then use the old traditional methods of things that we know about in qualitative research, showing what themes have emerged, how the themes were developed, and actually then write up something which is based on that. Now, question is, we are already in September. I'm hoping that by end of the year, maybe a little bit into the new year in March, I'll have at least 40, 50 cases that are there. With that data alone, we can have different research questions for different students. So one of the students can create a framework of resilience. What is it that we can learn from the storied experiences of entrepreneurs to be able to understand how they navigate through challenge? So you could actually have 4 or 5 students working on different forms of data and allowing that different forms of data to be able to tell a story of what you want to achieve. The advantage with that, colleagues, is very clear. I am not going to go and bother that same entrepreneur who's been interviewed by the newspaper source. I'm going to now work with what I currently have. Of course, there's a disadvantage. Okay, I don't have the ability for a follow-up question. I could, if I wanted to, search for the person and do all of that, but show me research which does not have limitations. All forms of research have limitations. So in this case, I shouldn't be necessarily worried that, oh man, this is not reliable enough. That's not the point. The point is that this is a phenomena that we are using to be able to understand what research is all about. And that's the exciting part for me, because we are then able to generate data about a phenomena and tell a story, which helps us to be able to work with the data that we're working with. So that's the first one, that we will be collecting data. And I can do it every year, by the way. I can get data every year to be able to use different sets of data. And imagine if it's for a master's student who's trying to build up to a PhD level, what that might mean for them. Okay, the second form of data I am working with, it's an exciting one. It's called audio data. And I think this is quite interesting because this tells us about audio data. This is run by Radio 702. And 702 runs what they call the Nedbank Business Ignite feature. And in that Nedbank Business Ignite feature, they interview different types of entrepreneurs. This is an example of some of the people who are interviewed there. This is one of the entrepreneurs. And so what also accompanies that recording, okay, my computer is frozen here. What also accompanies that is this. It's an audio recording. Let's see if it will work. Um, then let's share it.
And on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers. Able to hear the sound as well. Okay, let's try it again. Travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Every small business that dares to disrupt the industry deserves a shot at leveling up. Thanks to Nedbank Business Ignite on 702.
We are looking for those businesses that look at the industry, that have guts, that have determination, that dare to be disruptors. We're rewarding them with a shot to win 200,000 Rand in cash and a 200,000 Rand advertising package on 702. Need the right tools to run your small business? With Nedbank, you can get the latest Visa, MasterCard, and Amex accepting card payment device delivered to you.
It happens like that. So each interview then is becoming what we call a case. Remember, we're talking about case. So far, we've generated 7, and more actually are there. We've got the 2024 cases. There are 12 of them. So what's next for me? Well, the next task for me is then to go and look for a student and say to my student, okay, I'm in this new wave of data, this euphoria of data. We're going to give you 12 cases. Go and transcribe the interviews. We'll set a research question. For instance, the research question, how do small businesses deal with the nexus of success and failure on a continuum? And then we then listen to the data and then we try to analyze it to tell a story about that. So that's one other way I'm doing it. The other way that I'm working on is working with the GEM reports. Some of you would know the GEM reports, get the data from the GEM reports. It allows you to be able to get data. I also have some data that has come from the Eastern Cape Liquor Board. The Eastern Cape Liquor Board, the Eastern Cape Socioeconomic Consultative Council. So I'll be able to analyze trends over a period of time. So what's basically happening with this data is it's got Q1 to Q4 reports as far back as 2014 to currently 2024. So again, I could actually then say, I want to analyze the reports of the Eastern Cape province around unemployment. What are the trends that are emerging from that report? And this is basically work a master's PhD student can actually sit with instead of bothering people in the sample base to be able to talk about. So, colleagues, what I'm talking about tonight is something that I'm trying to walk the talk and also try and see how I can also work with it. But remember, the point I'm merely making here is that data is everywhere. So please don't limit yourself. Go and look for that data that you want. And the data doesn't always have to be you going to try to get access by people to say, please, can I have access to this sample group so that I get this actual data? Data is just everywhere, and we need to just find ways to look for it in terms of what we are wanting to achieve. The second point I want to talk about is we need to free ourselves from what I've called here methodological entanglements. Methodological entanglements are sometimes methods that we often engage in because sometimes we think they are methods that help us to arrive to the truth faster. I sometimes don't know what that means because you sometimes get a PhD master student say to me, I want to use a mixed method approach. And while I've got no problem with that, but you will actually find a challenge that often happens with using mixed methods is I hope that you don't have a scenario where the two methods that you have used are answering two different research questions. So the idea really is that there must be alignment between the methods that you are using. Often when there is no alignment, this is where the challenges come through. And the challenge that comes through with the lack of alignment is really then evident because it takes more time to do when one method is equally answering what it is that you want to cover. So be careful with mixed methods. I've put some sources there you can check out to try and guide you to improving the idea of the use of mixed methods. Number 3, where surveys end, stories and narratives begin. There's a story to share here. 2012, I enrolled for a PhD, having finished in the UK, having finished a master's in Ireland, and I was I created a model. My supervisors were happy with the model to say, great, we're going to do a quantitative study. One of my supervisors, Dr. Caroline Ramsey, would then come to me and say, I'm not sure this is what you want to do. And I asked Caroline to say, well, what do you mean this is not what I want to do? She says, well, your work merely regurgitates what we have come to know in the Western world, but your work does not tell us about the African side of things. And I then made a huge turn on my PhD. I started to think about using narratives. So let's explore the rich experiences that stories bring. A part-time of mine that I'm enjoying these days, I like listening to blogs and vlogs that people are making. There's one that I listen to passionately in Zimbabwe, where they interview different people in society about challenges that they are going through, understanding how they've navigated through those challenges. So stories are also an important part of data collection. There's also sometimes qualitative stuff comes in because quantitative data does not tell us certain things that we want to understand. Quantitative data often misses things. Later on, as Prof. Matibe requested, I'll tell you about photo voice as a technique to use. The more the evidence, the better the argument may be. Communities of practice, sometimes qualitative methods are more engaging. A couple of years ago, I had a PhD student, Herring Shava, who's now at Walter Sisulu University. We developed a model that we wanted to test amongst cleaners at the University of Fort Hare to try and see how and what can be done to try and assist those cleaners to think of entrepreneurship as a possible path that they could take, even in addition to the roles that they are doing. So once we've designed the model, we then met our first challenge. How do we explain the word entrepreneurial orientation or the word bricolage in isiXhosa? Because clearly the sample that we were working with was not able to comprehend some of these terms and terminologies that we were using. So we then designed a way of response to this. We then translated the questionnaire to the local language. Of course, that was one of the limitations because translating a questionnaire alone to a local language is not as easy as we think it is. It really needs, it could be a PhD in itself, the translation of an instrument. So all we are saying and all I'm saying, evident from my experiences, we just have a paper that's been accepted around the notion of dirty work using narratives in the informal sector. This was done with a former postdoc of mine, Charles Kobina, who is Ghanaian himself, and found way of penetrating the Ghanaian community of informal workers and traders, and trying to understand how do they respond to work that is deemed dirty, work that is deemed that some people would not do. We've also got work around narratives of remote working. We've got work where we were looking at how do we break barriers of growth in the informal sector. And narratives for me have been quite useful to try and understand that phenomena that we're looking at. We can also say, number 4, African scholars should tap into Afrocentric ways of doing research. What we're trying to avoid here is you positioning yourself as a scholar from the African continent with little or no understanding of the context in which you're working in or the methods that you're using. I came across this book. I would recommend it if you've got a little bit of extra money around. It's about really Africa as method. It talks about the sources of African epistemology and how these have helped us to understand where research and how research has been grounded in an African context. What are some of the things that we look at in African research methodology? Well, the crucial one are the people. We look at the role of relationships, our elders, our ancestors, the collaboration that we are doing. Interestingly enough, if you want to also align this type of work, there is the scholars in New Zealand, particularly the interest in the Aborigine community, also talk to this. Next year, those who follow the Academy of Management type of conferences, there is the Indian Academy of Management in Mumbai, which also is going to be looking at some things. It's a great conference to try and attend, also to try and get these ideas around the people, the places that we belong to, and how they're a sacred space, how these places also shape and give value to what we call home and our understanding. What are our expectations? What are our frameworks? How do we produce the data? How do we understand ethics? For instance, under ethics, it's quite interesting when you do research with communities. And I think the research offices countrywide are not yet ready to deal with this one. You are going to collect data in Alice near the communities that are there. You just don't arrive in that community and start interviewing people. There are processes, procedures that need to be followed, people to talk to. And in some cases, you don't go there empty-handed. You might need to go with something to say, Chief, we've brought you this as a way of asking you to welcome us into the community. And that's quite interesting when you do research in African communities. The expectations that are there, and also not to demean them, but to also understand this as a natural way and a part of the African community. So that's also another article you can check out, which is talking about African methodologies. So we need to consider digital methods. I call this a sleeping giant, and the way we need to harness the power of digital platforms. So Prof Matibe asked a question to say, please expand on photo voice. So photo voice, and I'm glad Dr. Maluleke is here. He's also from education. They use a lot of photo voice in their methods. Photo voice is a participatory action research method you could use together with participatory action research. It really uses photos. So I'm going to create a study for you, Prof Matibe. You are interested in understanding how your kids view what entrepreneurship is about through schools often do this thing called entrepreneurship day at school. So last year I had to help my kids who were selling Zimbabwean products at their school. So we went and bought Mazoe. Those who are from Zim would know it. And then we went and bought, so we took the kids through the journey of saying, these are the cups. We bought 100 cups. Each cup costs this amount. This is what we're spending. This is the Mazoe, so that they are understanding the idea of inputs that they are putting in, processing, labor, the costing, and the actual selling. So what photo voice would then do, Prof Matibe, is then you would take a camera and then you would record photos or videos at each stage of what the kids are going through. And then when you've got all that, those videos and techniques ready, you would then have maybe tell a story about it from an individual reflection point of view, or you could use that as part of training of other kids to say, okay, kids, we want to train you to become entrepreneurs. We're going to show you a series of pictures of how others became entrepreneurs or in their role. And then you then can write a story about that in terms of that experience. I have seen photo voice also being used in communities. So for instance, we are doing research in a township in King Williamstown called Ginsberg. And one of the things that we're doing in that, we're trying to understand issues. This is for my honors students, issues on civic engagement amongst youths. You often hear that youths have apathy. They don't take part in civic engagement. So this is a two-part process. So the first part of the process, we have a survey, which we have run. We are now analyzing the data. But the second part of the process next year, we are going to take a sample of 15 of those youths from that community. We are going to give them a digital camera. Nowadays, it's even nicer because people have got phones, so we don't even have to buy digital cameras or disposable cameras. And then we're going to ask them 3 types of questions. Take 5 pictures of things you don't like about your community. And they take pictures of the sewage, of the violence, and whatever it is they take. So now if there are 10 people, so now apply 10 by 5, you already have 50 pictures of dislike. And then on another day, we'll take them, well, take 5 pictures of things that are working in your community. And then what happens next is they then take pictures of what's working in their community, and then they put those pictures online, or they take pictures. And then we then say, let's have a focus group discussion, an exhibition, if you like. We hire out a big wall. We put the pictures in the hall, and then next to each picture, we can allow people to draw or write a message. If it's a picture of crime, they write a message. That's already data we've generated. If it's a picture of something we like, they write a message. They put it out there. And what we are doing consistently through that, we are generating data. We can generate data through, and then that's why it's called photo voice. The voice is coming from the photos. So if you are wanting methods to use that get people to talk, photo voice is an excellent one as well. You could use a picture of something that is happening in the community, and then you use that as a way of saying, based on the picture that you are seeing here, let's generate conversation and talk. So digital methods, colleagues, are exciting methods of what you could do. I know of colleagues who are working with something called netnography. Netnography is when they are using and harvesting, that's the word they use, they are harvesting Twitter X tweets about a certain phenomena. So Shaka Ilembe just ended yesterday, season 12, and then you go online to try and understand what are the views of people towards the just ended Shaka Ilembe as a local production. You can use analyzing tweets by prominent people. That's called netnography. But to make your life even easier, Prof Matibe, I have compiled 2 slides here of different types of digital methods, and I'm amazed, colleagues. There are more variants of digital methods we could be using, but we don't use them as much as we should be. Social network analysis, you can Google some of them. Let me pinpoint some of them. Video analysis, wearable-based research. I've got a colleague in information systems who is using this to try and understand people's perceptions around smartwatches. So they measure palpitation. So instead of measuring mental health through a survey, they then use these wearable devices to actually get data there. Zoning and zone mapping, to analyze what is happening in a certain community. And this is called zone analysis, used a lot by geography people. Online questionnaires, gamification, creating a game and using that as a way of collecting data. Social media analysis, mobile ethnography, observing how people respond to certain phenomena. And I know this works because we spend a lot of time on our phones. We spend a lot of time on devices. So these are possible methods we could use also for digital methods. HR analytics, live audience response, getting data in live mode, data mining, computer-assisted interviewing, CATI. You can have a look, you can Google them. Obviously, be guided by this. Sorry, I'm going to take you back. Please be guided by this, okay? Be guided by this activity of looking what you can do and cannot do. Okay, so let's wrap up now. Number 6, just because we are going to be using alternative methods, it doesn't mean we get away from rigor. We still must have rigor and integrity in the work that we do. So this is something I look out for when I'm marking master's, PhD thesis and stuff, to say, is there rigor? Is there transparency? One of the things I often see people do with qualitative data, they tell us that these were the themes that emerged, but they don't tell us how we arrived to those themes. So we are literally left in the dark to try and understand, oh, okay, these are interesting themes, but how did you come about those themes? What informed the journey to those themes? And a lot of people don't tell us that. And I think they should be telling us that, because this is a crucial part of the journey that we take as qualitative researchers. We shouldn't just hide data. We should also be deliberate in trying to show the journey that we've taken. In most of the narrative research I've shared, I do like share quantitatively also how do we ensure rigor and integrity. And I think I'm not going to spend time there, but there is ways of showing so in the literature. Then the last point, number 7, we need to be finding methods that empower rather than methods that take power. A colleague of mine last week shared with me an experience they are going through at their workplace. And when they shared with me what they've done to try and take back their power, and I'm going to use that word, to take back their power, I was also empowered by that experience. What we should not be doing is letting the methods, okay, enslave us and not give us the power that we want. And that's just basically what it is. That sometimes we are taking certain paths and directions in terms of methods that we are using, and we have little or no understanding of that difference between methods that empower and methods that give power. So I know of another colleague who is busy with data collection for their PhD. They share with me what they are going through, challenges of access, challenges of successes that come. I got a text message to say, listen, today was a great day. This is what happened. I got access. It's starting to be promising. I'm starting to enjoy it. And that is an example of a method that is giving you power. Because if you can navigate through complexities that are happening as part of your work, it helps you also to understand the difference that potentially your work is going to make. But number 2, it also helps you to show you that you are part of a process or methods that are being used that are taking data or that are creating data in a very participatory method, in a method that does not enslave, in a method that does not disadvantage the other, but through methods that empower and give voice and allow us all to have some form of direction in what we are trying to achieve. And that's where the greatest challenge is with students. I'm meeting students who are collecting, are going to use surveys to collect data amongst women who don't even understand English. And they silence us in committees to say, we are using this method because I'm trying to arrive to understanding data using a large sample base of people. And they've got all these creative ideas of how they're doing about it. But are those methods really helping people to get us to an understanding of truth and knowledge, and to also assist us to not be enslaved? I beg to differ. I really think that we've got a big challenge, particularly in stepping away from tradition. And I hope through this presentation, we can start a conversation that helps us to be able to challenge some of these traditions as we've come to know them, particularly in the different disciplines and domains that we belong to. And that's it from me, colleagues. I don't know if there are any questions. We still have a bit of time. It would be nice to also hear experiences of what people are going through and also share how we can help each other, particularly in the journey that we're all in. I don't know if there are any comments, questions. I don't see any.
Prof, sorry, I can't find my hand.
Oh, all right. Dr. Lucky, go ahead.
No, thank you, Prof, for this presentation. It just got me thinking. especially about, my kind of like what I'm trying to do as far as research is concerned. And I do now get because initially when I saw the title, where has all the data gone? I was like very curious, first and foremost, to say, hey man, what happened? And what I was actually thinking about, I was thinking more about, how, say, for example, to cook a certain meal, like say a traditional meal, or how to make a particular medicine. And then now the people who make those meals or those medicines, you find that they are actually dead. Therefore we no longer get that knowledge. So I was actually thinking of this topic from that perspective, but now I actually do get it, that if, for example, I normally collect magazines, and the sections that attract me will be education, career related sections, just those little sections. So if I were to take that as a methodology, but now more intentionally, in terms of when I read newspapers, I look for those sections. I could actually, maybe in a period of a year, actually come up with certain data around the issue of career development, without having to go around asking people, unless of course it is actually necessary. And then the last thing that I must say that I learned and liked is the idea of enslaving yourself through a methodology. And I think for some of us who are actually still trying to emerge, especially when we supervise students, we struggle a lot, because all the students want to explore the perspectives, the perceptions of people on this, the perspective of teachers on this, and you don't know much how to actually help them. And I think this idea actually helps me now to actually think that actually what can actually think beyond, those interview, like I will do interviews, I will do photo groups, and you realize that they actually become standard. So thank you for this, Prof. I think it's just a challenge to actually say that data is everywhere, and we actually just need to change and improve actually how to look. And one last thing is also the issue of, I think when you are in a particular field, this is actually what you also need to do, to be engaging with different sources, to engage with how maybe social media, how YouTube, how newspapers are actually engaging with actually that field, and you can actually use that for research. So thank you very much, Prof. I just wanted to register my comment.
Thank you, Dr. Maluleke. Appreciate that. I've got a hand from Zukiswa, Dr. Zukiswa, Prof. Zukiswa. I don't know, Hoboji. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Prof. Good evening, colleagues. Thank you so much, Prof, for bringing, this topic. And I'm also part, of the audience that you are sharing, I would say, your intellectuality, on this issue. Because I think it was something that I've shared, I think a month ago with a colleague, because we're discussing this issue of a research that is fragmented, a research that is duplicated by our students, even ourselves. And the discussion went on, on issues that what is it that we are not doing right? And my answer was there is a lot of data in those cabinets, and we are doing nothing about that. And we keep on pushing the students, or I would say the researchers, saying that come up with some new sets of data. And then at the end, now that you have seen that these topics, were, I would say, were over-researched, and then it forced the researchers and also even the student, to duplicate, the same data sets or the same, I would say, research topics. So now, what you are, I would say, you are provoking on us is the issue of innovation about data, And also you are also pushing us to a new direction of to reimagine, about I would say the methodologies, to explore the methodologies that are outside there, because we are so keen and obsessed about the traditional methods and also the traditional ways of doing things. And when we are sitting, in these big tables, such as, I would say, make an example such as the ethics, where they are, I would say, those are rules, and also the procedures that are so, like, we have to focus on them. We don't want to allow the innovation.
Mm.
And we are making, I would say the production that we are the new production that we are trying to nurture on the other side. We are making those students to be redundant, to think backward all the time.
Mm.
So I think we need more of these, conversations
Mm.
where we can really, I would say, tap in, and also, try to explore, doing an in-depth, I would say, exploration in terms of these methodologies, especially at the era of digitalization.
Mm. Mm.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Doc. And I remember you now from SAPAM, the conferences that we attend. I'm going to share with you also an experience that we just had. We just got a paper. It's an amazing experience. We got a paper now accepted, and soon to be published in the journal called Africa Service Delivery. And I want to share with you some of the things that we came up with that paper. Where did we get the data? So I want to keep up with the theme that we are talking about. Basically, and I'm going to show you on the screen, we got this data from the Auditor General. And so that, Prof, where's the evidence? Here is the paper. You should be able to see it on the screen. There we go. We got this data from the Auditor General. So what we simply did here, the Auditor General releases their Auditor General's reports every year. And one of the things the Auditor General does is then to do all the hard work. So here was our guiding research question. Informed by the findings of the 2023 Auditor General's report, how do aspects of agentic power structure and the dynamic interplay of macro environmental manifest and affects the performance of local economic development agencies? So this is the version that is being prepared, what we call the copy edit version. And this is where we got the data. We got the data from the Auditor General. These were the municipalities that were reviewed by the Auditor General. This is how, when we analyzed the data, we generated our own themes. We then also generated supporting themes to that. And it's published. It's been accepted for publication. It should be coming out in the next month or so. And think of it this way, we could have gone and interviewed, which is still fine and permissible. But in terms of what we were trying to cover, I think this was also a nice way of collecting back what we wanted to do. So that I can also share with you, maybe on the sidelines, how we can work on more research like this, just working with document analysis. Yeah. Dr. Maluleke, you still have your hand up? It's a new hand. I don't know.
Oh yes, no, it's a new hand, Prof.
Yes.
I wanted to check because I think maybe the one thing that because I did an ethics certificate and it did not cover, things like if we had to use like what I would say is something that you can find publicly, but the ethics, around that if something is there out there, how do you navigate, the issue of I don't know, ethical use of anything that you can actually find.
Okay.
Thanks, Prof.
So I'll talk from the vantage point of the University of Fort Hare. The University of Fort Hare requires us even if we are handling data which is not our own secondary data, we do apply for ethical clearance. Usually, this is classified as research with low risk. So you still need to go through the ethics process. So for that project I was showing Dr. Zukiswa, we did go and get ethical clearance from the university. So it's then classified as low risk because you are using secondary data. But in some institutions, I know at one stage, even at Forte, we didn't allow people to apply for ethics on that with that type of research. But now I think with the evolving, changing times, we must apply for ethical clearance as a way of also navigating complexities around. We don't want you to mishandle the data. So it's also trying to protect those that are using the data so that it's not abused. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes. No. That really helps, Prof. Thank you.
All right.
May I come in, Prof?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Apologies for not raising my hand.
No
I've been
problem.
checking to see where I can get this emoji that can assist me to do that.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Let me start by commending you for organizing this informative event. I have learned a lot from it. I think it should be twofold. One is where is the data, and the second fold is, the handling, not the handling per se, but the ethical, considerations of this data. Really, I've mentioned many things here which I never thought of as a data for one to start with doing research. But one of the main concern now is, the ethical part of it. You see this data, they are available everywhere, but when we come to use them, at the end of the day, we may find ourselves, in hot water. Where is the permission to use this data? From the owners of the data's perspective, and then from also the institution we belong to. We always ask us, where is this permission? So this is really concern that it needs a session. Let me say this really, if you can organize a similar session about this, it will assist. And then one thing I would like to ask here is that I'm involved in a study, very recent, where I obtained the ethical clearance to collect the data. I've been to a number of municipalities, collecting this data. But during the course of collecting this data, I come to realize that there are certain things on their websites that are in public domain, these things. So when I want to use, this kind of information, is there anything that would require me to go back and, ask for permission from these people, despite the fact that I received, a gatekeeper's letter from them? So is there a need for me to take information from them that is in the public domain, use it in my study? This is a data also, which I never thought of during my proposals, at my proposal stage. But I come to realize that really, if I can take this kind of information, put it to support my analysis, or put it as, or use it as part of my analysis, it will really, support the study. So this is a question that I would like you to assist me in answering. Thank you very much, Prof.
All right, not a problem. I want to also share, thank you for the question. I want to share with you something I did as far back as 2016. There was a show on ENCA called, I forgot now. Okay, let's open it up. I'm going to share with you now. I'm just remembering the name of the show as I'm doing this, colleagues. But it was on ENCA. Very interesting show because it was about entrepreneurs, people that are breaking in the entrepreneurial space. Even published a paper in it, which is what I want to show you, in a journal called Acta Commerciae. So this is far back as 2016. So the okay, so you've got the whole literature stuff, you know it, which we do anyway. So the interviews of an independent media house were downloaded from the YouTube channel. A total of 60 shows of 10 to 15 minutes duration were downloaded, and they had to fit the parameters of it had to be on issues related to entrepreneurial development. The researcher also applied for ethical clearance. So I also want to say, in addition to applying for ethical clearance, we also got permission from the show producers. So we also wrote an email to the show producers and said to them, listen, this is what we want to do. And they agreed. So the first point of call, just because the data is on the internet, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't ask for permission. And in most cases, like with Auditor General's reports, they actually welcome that type of analysis to be able to say, okay, we will allow you to be able to access the data and to be able to use it. So first point of call, any data that is online, just seek permission. Seek permission institutionally, seek permission, importantly, from the owners of the data. If they say no, at least you are happy because you don't have to be sued later on to say we never gave consent. But in some cases, the process is made easy because you've got institutions like the Auditor General's office, and I think there's a lot we can do there, which actually is looking for researchers to come and say, we would like data for A, B, C, and D. So remember this paper, which is being published this year. Next year, we are following up with more a request to the Auditor General to say, we did the 2023 analysis. We want to do the 2024 analysis, which has been released anyway. And then we are building on a longitudinal scale some form of understanding. So get the permission from the sources. It's always crucial. There's also some great stuff. A good friend of ours, forgetting his name, TD, help me. Mark Saunders. Yes, Mark Saunders has got books and texts written where he actually talks about how to do qualitative research of this nature. So one of the things I've seen, whether it's any information that you are getting to supplement whatever that you are using, please get permission. I'll give you an example. On Sunday, there's something I'm trying to work on where we are analyzing, these financial statements of companies. They put them in the Sunday Times. So in this case, the permission we are getting to use that data is not found in the Sunday Times. It's actually found in the original source. So if Vodacom puts their annual financial statements there, and we want to analyze, for instance, does a company with multiple key priority areas perform better than one with fewer priority areas? Priority areas are obviously corporate social investment, all the other things. And then what we then do, we write to Vodacom and say, because this data is publicly available, we wish to inform you and ask for permission to use this data as it is on your platform or has been published in a newspaper source to be able to generate understanding around the research question that we're trying to ask. And that's exciting because on Sunday alone, I saw 3 companies that advertised their financial statements in the Sunday Times. So we are now working with big short companies using data that is publicly available, guided by a research question. And so I would suggest you check out the work of Mark Saunders, Chris Cresswell as well, to try Silverman, David Silverman. You don't even have to buy the books, the online stuff on the ethics of doing secondary data collection, secondary research. It will also be helpful to answering your query that you've got. Okay, colleagues, we are running out of time. I just want to thank you for joining us, and the recording will be available on my YouTube platform. You just search for me. But thank you for joining us, and I wish you well in your journey and whatever it is that you're working at in enhancing your research profile. Thank you and have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you, Prof. Willie. We really appreciate. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Prof.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Prof.
Bye-bye.